Hello and welcome to another Eudemonia video. So in today's video we'll be talking about David Bowie, but I'm taking a particular angle here, and this was a particular approach that I decided upon at the last minute, really, after watching a David Bowie documentary before I put this video together called Sound and Vision, and it got me thinking about my exposure to music over the years and how David Bowie fits into a really interesting category, which I'm going to explain by comparing it with 4 other bands. So through years of musical exposure, I just decided to pick 4 bands who I've engaged with quite heavily over the years, those being Queen, Judas Priest, UFO, Thin Lizzy. They're all contemporaneous to my lifetime, and in the case of, I think, 2 of the bands, they're still going in some form. The other 2, I think UFO are about to, they're currently on their final tour, which was temporarily delayed because of COVID, and Thin Lizzy have been sort of limping along in various guises, and of course all of these bands, anybody that's familiar with them will know over the years they've obviously lost fairly major members of the bands for various reasons, either members leaving or sadly dying. Now with all of these 4, these are all bands that I've engaged with and forked out hard cash over the years in terms of buying their back catalogue, and probably in multiple formats before we moved into the streaming era. With Queen, I probably first started buying stuff around 79, did the classic thing of like infilling, and then bought stuff as it came out going forward. I think the only albums I missed out on and didn't buy were The Miracle and Made in Heaven, although of course we're now in the streaming age, so I can listen to any of this as much as I like. Judas Priest, probably got on board with them around about the time of between Killing Machine and British Steel. Certainly they were getting in the charts. All of these, it's really as a result of them having singles in the UK charts. So with Queen, although I didn't start buying stuff till around here, I was hearing in the charts around this period here. With Judas Priest, I think it was Take on the World was the first track I heard by them. And both myself and my younger brother were big into the Priest. Then we have UFO, probably around the time of between Obsession and No Place to Run. They had a single in the charts, which is actually an earlier track, Phenomenon, on there. They got the track Doctor Doctor, but what happened was to promote the live album, they released a new version of it. I'm not sure that it was the live version or not actually, but certainly they were on Top of the Pops, miming to that track, to Doctor Doctor. And then with Thin Lizzy, with them it's interesting. I was aware of the first single, Whiskey in the Jar. I don't think that was officially on an album until they re-released some of them, and it was probably sometime around here. Was it Vagabonds, I think? Is it on there? Oh, it's on the reissue. So I think the single is it's actually a traditional track, actually came out independently of the album, and then it was respective A and B sides of 2 singles released around the same time. But it probably wasn't until Boys Are Back in Town maybe that I got reacquainted with them, and then I started buying albums around this period again, probably just after Black Rose, and again infilled. So all of these bands I've infilled very heavily. With UFO, more everything before Misdemeanor. So yeah, that would be a band that I've been actively engaged with, and I bought bands I've been actively engaged with, and I bought their output, their releases multiple times in different formats, as one tends to do if one is of a certain age. What's interesting about David Bowie is, for me, I have a different relationship musically with David Bowie. So I was aware of him first around the time of Space Oddity. Let me just jump forward to his discography here to make it a bit easier. So yeah, around the time of Space Oddity, came out around this period, coincided with a particular Apollo mission as well. Did really well. And then going forward, of course, most of his various singles would make the UK charts. But I don't remember buying any of his albums when they came out. It's purely anything I've bought has been retrospectively, quite a number of years afterwards, and probably because at the time, I think the only album I ever bought by him when it came out was actually Outside. And where I'm going with this is, I then started thinking, yeah, there's artists who also are contemporaries or were contemporaneous to my life, where they've had more of, they're not ambient artists, but they've been performed more of an ambient role in my appreciation of music. They've been bubbling away in the background. I haven't bought a ton of their stuff, but I've listened to them a lot on the radio, and I like their stuff. And it's only through infilling a lot later that I'd ever bought their stuff, and to the point that it was so late that, you know, streaming had come online, and so most of these albums I listened to through streaming. And I'm trying to look at it and think, I know I had The Man Who Sold the World on cassette, and I do have a new copy or vinyl copy of Hunky Dory, and then I suspect I've got random CDs like this, probably on CD at some point I bought. And I believe what I did was, this is a period of I really like, which is Station to Station, and then the Berlin period, and then Scary Monsters. These albums nicely sort of bookend that Berlin period, and I think definitely this is my favourite period. But again, my consumption has been more sort of ambient in nature, and the question is to everybody out there watching that: are there any artists that you can think of that you listen to, that you have that musical relationship with, where you haven't been buying or necessarily listening to their stuff? Well, buying, I suppose, is more, actively engaging with their stuff as it came out. You like the artist, but you purely consume them. And again, this applies more of those people who are of an age pre-streaming, I suppose. But you more normally had consumed them through the radio or through listening to them with friends, and didn't necessarily go out and buy stuff. But musically and in terms of shaping what maybe other things you listen to, they did have a big impact. So it's almost like they've induced you to listen to other artists, and go out and buy other artists' stuff. But in terms of actually buying their material, that hasn't happened that much. And I thought that was interesting. It's the first time I've really thought about it. because I've watched a lot of documentaries on David Bowie over the years and listened to a lot of things and been really interested. I've even got that big David Bowie chronological book upstairs. But in terms of actively buying the stuff, not so much when you compare it to these four. But he's put out some fantastic material over the years. As I said, this is probably my favourite period. I did like Outside, but the reason why I bought that when it came out is I saw a performance of one of the tracks off the album on Later with Jules Holland, and it was a particularly heavy version of Hello Space Boy. This actually got released as a remix, and it's quite different than the version on the album, but the one they played in the studio live was amazing. And I'm not sure who played. There were two guitarists playing in the studio on Later with Jules Holland, and one thing that impressed me is that they had this, if you've ever watched Later with Jules Holland, they have like a camera operator that moves around quite a bit, and I was just impressed by the sheer size of the effects pedals that the guitarists were using, like the size of the board at the time. I've probably watched back now since I've seen even bigger pedal boards over since then, and probably think, oh, they're not that huge, but at the time I was like completely amazed at the amount of stuff they had on the floor as well. I didn't really get big into that Let's Dance that much, but I did like some of the singles. And it's interesting as well, once you sort of explore this period, you get into all interesting connections with Iggy Pop, and also, around this period, and you realised how much David Bowie got involved with other artists in terms of production or writing, or also, playing. I can't remember what album. Someone was talking about an album the other day in one of the documentaries and saying pretty much David Bowie played all the instruments on it, and I can't remember which artist it was now. So, again, interesting influence on other artists who I then went on to appreciate. So certainly Iggy Pop, and from this period we've got Mott the Hoople, all the young dudes, and also Transformer by Lou Reed as well. So just very interesting how his musical influence on me has been ambient in nature in terms of how I absorbed it. And there is a link here. You'll see when the top 5 video comes out after this, there's a link to Ambience, but also if you're interested, and what after Outside got me back into sort of listening to a lot of his stuff was, let me try and find it, it's tricky, I think, there it is. So the All Saints album, so this is super interesting. This collects together, it was originally a Christmas gift from Bowie to friends and family. There was only over 150 copies made, and that was in 93. It's a 2-disc set, and it was all the instrumental works. I don't know if it's all of them, and of course most of these came off of the Berlin albums. And really interesting listen. If you've not listened to this, I recommend you check it out. Should be available for streaming. It finally got released in 2001, and I'm not sure how much of the original copies ended up on the final release. I'm assuming, oh, there it is actually. There's the answer further down. So it looks like there's slightly more here than here. So yeah, this is the version I've got. I haven't got the collector's item, just so you're clear on that. This is the copy that I bought on CD. Yeah, very interesting listening. So yeah, as well as me consuming him in an ambient nature, I've also consumed his ambient works, and of course a lot of these, as you probably realise from the credits, was due to associations with Brian Eno, which makes an awful lot of sense. So hopefully that this particular video was interesting. Like I said, it was just a thought I had as I was thinking of put something together off the back of that, watching that documentary the other night, The Sound and Vision it's called. And yeah, like I said, I'd be curious to know if anybody else has had that musical relationship with an artist where, you know, that they have consumed them through in almost like an ambient way, or by just being on the radio and maybe buying the odd album here and there, but they've just always been there, and has influenced their tastes in music, as opposed to, you know, the bands that you're really sort of passionate about and engage with and consider yourself to be a really big fan of. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.